Well, welcome to the April community call. It's already spring. Anybody else struggling to believe that? Might just be me. But welcome. Good to see you all. From those who have never been here before, glad you're here with us. The way that we handle these calls is I open up with whatever the product group wants to talk about, and the rest of the floor is really for all of you to interact and chat and talk top of mind. I am going to hog a little bit more time, but I'll try to not be in the way. We have a bunch of things that we showed off at the PowerShell Summit that I'd like to show some of you. Starting with, let's see here. Can I make this work? Doesn't look like it likes putting next with me. I'm totally just going to show you a demo from a existing deck that we did yesterday, and I'm just gonna jump right to the content because a lot of this stuff, those of you who've been joining every month, you're already familiar with. Can people see the presentation?
Not yet. There it is.
Oh, yeah.
It's up now.
Come on.
Sweet.
Yep.
So I want to talk a bit about, well, actually, before I get there, I just want to take a moment and say, we posted this, and I think it's good for all of you to be on the radar for it, but we sent out a little survey. We do this on a regular cadence and ask for feedback in terms of what are your top pain points or challenges. This is what we got. We have heard everything here loud and clear. Our agenda was pretty much built for this session. We had 3 sessions just around those challenges. And there's a few things I want to note here. Number one, for the Azure provider, there's a strategic shift that we're making where we're trying to go from, hey, let's wait until some team comes to us and bothers us about a feature, to, hey, let's try to actually make sure that for these really critical services, we have a proactive coverage. So really trying to take away the problem that has existed for a while here where people are like, hey, I'm waiting for support on this really critical feature and you got like hundreds of upvotes on it or something. We're trying to make sure we do so in a way that doesn't screw over the other providers. So that really means that we're trying to experiment with AI. I know that we can't really get away from AI nowadays, and what we're looking into is how do we sort of impart the Terraform knowledge and skills to a team as they're co-developing so that their generic interface API is good to go and supports Terraform on Azure and works well with the Go SDKs that Terraform Azure ecosystem, the Azure provider in particular. Those are all just top of mind for us, and I just wanted to share that with you. There is nothing new in terms of the MS Graph and AZ API content, so I'm just going to skip straight to state management and chat a bit with you about the fact that we have heard and seen that state is not a straightforward thing to represent all the time. I know some of you in this call have very much done a great job with making sure that the state drift and the handling of state is well thought out and sophisticated. We've tried to invest for some of the beginners into an open NVS code experience through the portal. Have we shown that, by the way, in here? Have people seen that? If not, I'm going to need to show that in another session. Okay, great. And then the main thing that I wanted to say was, hey, we're trying to help give guidance, but what we also are trying to work on is a tool. Right now, it's called Absorb. We told our team that, and they said that is the worst name ever. So we're going to call it Project Absorb, which is just a really fancy Microsoft way of saying we are not going to keep that name. But what it's trying to do is, and what it does is it'll say, hey, here's something that happened outside of your sort of jurisdiction, and we're going to just catch that and we're going to deal with it. Obviously, this requires a few parameters to be set. I'm going to go ahead and speed partially through this demo. And so let's just say, at least in this scenario, you've created a storage account. You can go ahead and check out your storage account in your resource groups. And let's say that it's probably not you, right? You're a sophisticated Terraform on Azure community member, but let's just say that intern A on your team comes through and decides, hey, I'm just playing around the portal. I'm gonna add a random tag for fun. So they go in and they say, okay, I'm gonna go and add myself as owner. So they go ahead and do that, and you're like, oh man, this sort of stuff happens all the time. And it doesn't have to just be tags, right? We've seen over the years how manual drift can happen in a variety of scenarios outside of that. So once that's done, what we really wanted to showcase is that normally you would go and run a Terraform plan. It'd take a few seconds, and then you'd be like, hey, the thing changed on you. Give it a second there. And that would be a little bit annoying for you because of what it's going to try to do is remove that tag. The absorb tool essentially allows you to run this command. And as you can see, we don't have like a dedicated binary yet. This is early on. It will go ahead and pull in the Terraform plan, and then it'll create its own sort of way to deal with the plan diff. And then what you can do from there is say, okay, I'm going to actually absorb that change so that the plan is no longer going to scream at me about that change. Now, this is in a one particular scenario, which is when you're trying to actually suppress the diff and you actually want Terraform to stop making noise about it. That is, excuse me, one way of doing it, but I also want to recognize that sometimes you might want to actually reconcile the differences as well. There's a few ways that this approach could go. All that to say, we are trying to make sure that Terraform plan, state management, state drift, all of that gets handled in a way that is going to not just ignore changes blindly, but make sure that the code is somewhat accurately understanding those situations. So that's a little quick demo. Are there any questions? I'll pause for 2 seconds. If not, then what I'll go ahead and do is yes, there is a link for the absorb tool where someone who was on our team built the tool, so you can read that blog post if you're curious. And then the other thing I need to make sure I chat about with you all is I'm going to completely shorten this to like a 2-minute hallway lightning talk. But we actually went out there and said, hey, we're going to do a whole session on the Terraform and Azure provider ecosystem. And the simple question was, hey, when the heck do you pick Azure and when the heck do you pick AZ API? This was one of the top pieces of pain that we heard from our customers. I just want to take a second and highlight that we've come a long way from where we used to be. Those of you who have been in Terraform for a decade at this point will remember the days of using the Terraform CLI and Terraform PowerShell providers to try to run scripts that essentially would get you the support you needed for Terraform. Now we have 2 full-fledged providers, both writing an HCL between the Azure and AZ API. The really short summary is pick a primary. I think we said, hey, both are great for the longest time. But what we don't want you to do is end up in decision fatigue or analysis paralysis, where you're stuck kind of juggling into two providers. Uh, we talked at length during the session about what we essentially say is friction. There are a variety of forms of friction, such as plan time validation, force new, API orchestration, multi-resource orchestration, creating delete dependencies, and then reshaping resources. All of this is to say that there are ways that the Azure provider is built to absorb friction from Azure to Terraform, whereas the AZ API provider does not try to absorb those. Instead, it basically says, hey, the control's all in your hands, buddy. You got to figure that out. So all in all, there's a lot more I could say to this, but I would just say if you are from more of a Terraform background and Terraform's where you started and Terraform's that you're familiar with, Azure behaves more similarly to how Terraform behaves in whatever way you want to interpret that phrase. And AZ API is behaving in a way that is a lot more consistent with how Azure behaves because it is unopinionated and just passes along the current behavior, for better or for worse. So that was some of the stuff that we covered in 10 minutes. Any questions, any clarification points or anything like that? Paul.
Yeah, thanks, Stephen. I had a quick question. On the last call, there was a gentleman on that was talking about the and I don't know if it's limitation anymore or a point of confusion, the JSON constructs that go into AZ API would used to. And you made a statement, or there was other people on the call who made a statement, that's all kind of disappeared now, and it's really just Terraform code or HCL code. Is that true with the AZAP? We don't have to actually have JSON constructs anymore, or
Yep.
just want to get your 2 cents.
If I could, I would megaphone every single person who's ever used AZ API 1.0 and tell them it's not JSON anymore. Here, I'll pull my mic. It's not JSON anymore. Since 2.0, it's all HCL, and that means that you're getting all of the language benefits that you're familiar with HCL. So if you're seeing JSON samples or if you're seeing JSON in general, you're probably on 1. Whatever. Get off of it as quickly as you can. We're at this point trying to work toward a 3.0 release. So definitely would recommend that you sit on 2. Something. Doesn't matter which 2. Just I think in retrospect, we were excited to get that out there for people. But yeah, the JSON was not great. It's not JSON. Don't use the JSON versions of it. So.
That's good. And do you have any future direction with like Azure just released an MPC server into the entire environment? Does your group actually work with your MPC server group? And do you have any plans for that for Terraform in the future?
Yeah. I'm assuming you're saying MCP and not MPC.
Yeah, Model Context Protocol, right? So
Yeah. So
for AI,
we're working
agentic
with
AI.
Yeah. So we're definitely working with those groups to see how we can leverage both on the Azure side and the Hashi side. We're working towards how do we create basically translation layer through Model Context Protocol, where we're like, hey, here's all the documentation, here are all the realities around Azure and Terraform. So we're in the process of that. We actually demoed and have shown that before in this call. I know it's been a while and we still haven't put it out there. The main thing that we're trying to avoid is we don't want all of you to have 15 MCP servers installed at once just to do like your day-to-day. So we're trying to make sure we roll that thing up into existing suites and features like the Azure MCP server and so on and so forth.
All right, thank you.
Of course. Any other questions, Jim?
Yeah, hi. Just a quick question there. This is my first time on the forum, so I'm not sure if this is something obvious or not. Just curious about what your development efforts are. Are you working with the open source version of Terraform, or are you kind of tending towards the HashiCorp one? Because I see mentions of HCL and all of that. Just wondering, is this open version safe, or is there more of a tilt towards the customized HashiCorp version?
I mean, I think the easiest way for me to answer that is just simply how many people on the call are working in open source Terraform versus enterprise versus HCP. And I mean, I could take and chuck a poll here real quick. I will say, like in general, people are pretty open source Terraform, or the original free tier, if you want to call it that, has always sort of been the most popular one. But I do know that plenty of people here are working in TFE and TFC. I'll leave it to them to say whether or not they think it's like critical for. It depends probably on your organization and what the requirements are.
But as far as your development efforts, are you trying to be as agnostic as possible to?
Yeah, we don't push people. We don't push people in one way or the other. That's sort of, we're just trying to make sure that the Terraform and Azure experience is good across the board. We're not owners of like Terraform Cloud. So.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Hi. You said people should consider moving away from Azure API version 1. Is there any support issues or anything would that stop working, or how critical is it to move away? Is there a timeline for that?
Yeah, we're not punting AZ API 1.0 in the sense of we're gonna like literally block people from deploying on it. I'm just saying that if you're gonna be using any version of AZ API, you should definitely use 2.0 and above. Don't I would never recommend anyone at this point to use 1. Anything for AZ API. No official timeline.
There's no official timelines. Yeah. Okay. And I believe all the AVMs are all built on the latest versions. Yeah.
Yep, that's correct. They're always trying to make sure they pull from the up-to-date AZ API versions.
Perfect. Thank you.
All right. Any other questions? If not, the floor is all yours. What topics do people have? What is top of mind for people? Carl, I don't know if you can come off mute, but can you talk to us about statecraft? Totally putting it in the spot. All right, I don't think he's going to be able to talk right now, but. What have people been thinking about top of mind?
Well, the statecraft thing looks interesting. I just have their website open, and it seems that they use Postgres or whatever to try and model the relationships in a way that's faster, but it's not quite clear to me how that's achieved, because unless they are rewriting all of the providers, which is not a good idea, or is a tricky idea, then it would seems like you're still kind of limited by the main slow parts of Terraform.
Let's pull it up so everyone can see it.
I guess the point is that if you centralize all of the state file changes through one database, that if you assert that nothing changes outside, you can skip the lookup step, but that it's kind of risky because that's like the whole point is the drift detection of the Terraform side.
Yeah, I'm curious how they do that. In AZ API, we like just recently we created a flag for basically ignoring no op changes, but that one is essentially contingent on you being okay with doing like an Azure get and then suppressing the plan diff if the actual response hasn't changed at all. I'm wondering what this skip logic is. Here's what I'm seeing, by the way, for those who are not sure what we're talking about. Hopefully my screen's not too. Curious to see how it looks. Jay?
Yeah, just going back to your absorb demo, is that just importing those changes back into the state, or is your Terraform config also being updated as well? It won't, right? It'll just be the state.
I think what it's happening is, yes, it's state file manipulation, for basically handling the state file without you needing to change the configuration. So this is a situation where you don't want to make the configuration change yourself. But I think, yeah, we would probably want to ensure that whatever changes you want to make can be made, whether it's suppressing a div through the state file or actually making the change in the configuration.
But isn't that a risky thing, because your configuration will say one thing and the state is completely different if that keeps on happening over time? So there's a drift between your config and state itself, isn't it?
I think I'm in agreement with you. So that's where I think to get this out there, we're going to need to essentially ensure that the state drift is handled in a methodical manner. It's sort of up to you, is I guess the way I would put it. What right now is sort of the first step is, can we actually identify it, and can we do like some manipulation from there? I think the next step would be, okay, can we actually make that manipulation just that everything is under Terraform's jurisdiction and that it's under its control, so that's not worried about that.
But Terraform does natively allow importing individual resources into the state, right? So you're talking about attributes of an existing resource that has got a drift, or are you talking about using this to import larger pieces of infrastructure back into?
No, you're completely right. Like, if you know that the resource has changed, obviously. So, but what this is trying to do is say, like, hey, even if I don't know what's going on, or even if I'm not like necessarily just aware, I'm able to identify. So, changes as that's the end. Because with an import, you have a target window.
Are you breaking up a little bit? I'm not sure if it's just me.
Sure.
Didn't catch that at all. I'm not sure if it's just me that's having an issue, but yeah, I didn't catch that last sentence you said.
It was cutting up for me too.
Okay. Back online.
Yeah, slightly better. We can hear you.
Now I think it wasn't just you, so thanks. All I was saying is, yeah, what we're trying to tackle is just how do you handle the problem of changes that are occurring outside of Terraform. So we're iterating on that, and I think I agree with you. The changes that we're making, we're trying to not make more problems for you down the road in terms of like whack-a-mole or cutting your ears and pretending those changes don't exist.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, it would be interesting to know why the existing import functionality doesn't work. And again, I think, yeah, if it's within a resource, like you showed a tag missing, plan is clearly showing that there is a drift. So yeah, people can always import that manually. But if it's larger pieces of infrastructure changes, yes, somebody created a new resource that, or changed the multiple properties and things like that, you do have the import features and everything. So yeah, I'm just trying to understand what's the need for this again on top, basically. But yeah, I'll take a look into it separately. But yeah, I was just curious as to why this is being done.
Gotcha. Yep. Matt.
Yeah, I wanted to say one thing that I did with that is I made like a shared action for this where you could put it in a repo and run it either on demand or on a schedule. And really what it's trying to do is just go through and it'll run a plan on the particular repo. And if it just sees anything that's different than no changes in infrastructure, it'll go through and actually make an issue in the repo and then mention whoever are the like owners or admins on the repo and call it basically like drift detected, investigate essentially, and it just outputs the plan to the issue and just notes like, hey, this is different than, you know, essentially what was previously happening. Like somebody should look at this, and then it will, if that issue is still open and it continues to happen, if it was like set on a schedule per se, it won't create a new issue, but it'll just keep adding to the existing issue that got opened. So essentially people could start to see like, hey, this happened, you know, at a certain time. And it's not like it's fixing it, but it's definitely like telling people, hey, something is going on. Because obviously you want to try to get to a point where hopefully you're seeing no changes in infrastructure and everything is clean. But I don't know, that's sort of a way that I went about it. And it's like probably for lower environments, it's not as big of a deal, but I feel like it could be incredibly handy for like prod environments where you could set it on a schedule, let it run however many, you know, once a day or whenever somebody wanted to, and essentially like notify if there's some change.
That makes a lot of sense. And how are you scoping that change? Or how is it kind of determining whether it needs to make a new issue?
It will look at the plan and just essentially if there's any type of, if it doesn't say no changes to infrastructure, it's just looking at that plan. So if it notices anything that's showing up as like an add, change, or destroy, it'll essentially create that issue. And you could scope that to, you know, different stuff, but this is just like trying to get to a clean state as much as possible. So yeah, that's how I worked on it.
And that makes a lot of sense. It sounds like it is partitioned by each state file that you have.
Yeah, yep. And then it's just basically, like I said, a shared action that if people are really interested in using it, it's there and it's ready, and it's just, yeah, they could set it on a schedule if they want or just run it on demand.
Thanks for talking. Sure. Love to see demos of them. Get a chance to. All right. It's like we got a poll coming. Oh, my sound is still really bad.
Yeah, I threw that poll up there just to see what people are doing to actually use Terraform. Are they putting in locals? Do they use a lot of default values, individual variables, you know, var equals location, var equals name, var equals this, you know. I'm curious what the group's consensus is on that. So I didn't know if I overstepped by putting that on there.
I'm kicking you off and you're never coming back, William. No, I'm just kidding. This is a community call, right? By the way, is my sound better? I think it was
That's amazing.
linking my input to my laptop, which is plugged off to the side like 10 feet away from me. So that's why I sounded like I was in some echo chamber on the other side. And I think you can submit multiple checks, by the way. So if you're doing locals and TFRs, make sure to check that off. Sam.
Yeah, this is my first meeting, so I don't know if this is the right place to be asking these questions or not, but three things kind of come to mind for me when it comes to developing with Terraform on Azure. One is the app gateway module. Has anybody ever brought that up?
Yes, and you're not alone in whatever sentiment you feel towards the app gateway.
Okay, because it is the worst experience I've ever had. Being one large resource versus kind of parent-child resources. So, is there any work going on in that space?
You would have to ask the app gateway team if you mean like in terms of partitioning that thing into multiple resources. But I mean, the main thing that we try to do, excuse me, and this is one of those things where Azure RM has its benefits. You essentially can we do everything we can as engineering team to absorb all the wonkiness of certain services. I guess I'll put it that way. And that just means that we try to keep it as simple and intuitive for you as possible. But in terms of whether or not the underlying service APIs or changes are fixed, that is essentially up to the service team. AVM, I think, has an app gateway module, and I think I heard that that is not as horrible of a time, but obviously mileage may vary. But yeah, we're pretty big fans of Azure Verified modules on this call in terms of getting things spun up. But
Okay. And then locks. We find that creating and deleting locks, I believe, always takes. It's been a long time since I've looked at it, but I swear it's 2 minutes every time. You know, where other actions are snap of a finger and they're done.
anybody else have that experience?
No? Okay. Seems weird.
Seems weird.
And then the last thing for me is we're using like Git as our module sources. You know, and I know there's something for AWS. I think there's something for possibly Google. Is there going to be anything for Azure storage accounts?
In terms of Azure modules that you can utilize?
In terms of like publishing, you know, our company's custom modules that we're building.
Yeah, I mean, it should be pretty much the same thing you're saying for publishing on the Terraform registry, your modules, or are you talking about something else?
Like if you go out to Terraform documentation, right? They got module sources out there, and there's a bunch of options. Azure storage accounts is not one of them, but AWS is. I think Google is. So we're just using Git repositories, and it's not the greatest.
Yeah, I would. Private registry, I think, is the term. Kevin, are you raising your hand because you have an answer?
Yeah, I was just wanting to confirm that's what he was looking for. So you're looking to not just have them in Git and then call the Git link to use your module, but you want to use your company Terraform modules or Terraform modules at yourcompany.com or something, right? As like the pull for your module versus a straight Git link.
Yeah, like I'm trying to find documentation here.
So
I'm sorry.
Like if you had like Terraform Cloud or Terraform Enterprise, you'd be using
Which
the private registry feature in
we
there.
don't have any of, we don't
Right.
have any
So
of that stuff.
So there are some open source alternatives as far as like your own stand up your own private registry that follow the registry spec for hosting your own modules and then like integrating OpenID. There's a bunch on GitHub. I handled this before. Let me see if I can find it and drop it in the chat. But that would be your best bet is to host your own registry, commit your modules there from your GitHub repos and then be able to call from there. And that gives you that nice front end where the URL for the modules doesn't change if in the back it doesn't, or if the module locations change, we move from GitHub to GitLab or to some other Git repository system.
And if your question is, hey, if I go on the Terraform registry and search for modules containing storage, where can I find one that's Azure related? I just linked one there. That's an AVM module for a storage account.
Yeah, I'll try and find it and drop a link. I've been to the page a number of different times, and I don't know if they redid their pages here, their documentation or not. I can't find it.
The main thing in terms of the search results on the registry is they always sort by the number of downloads, and a lot of our AVM stuff is newer on the block, so it tends to not show up on like page 1 or 2. That's where I would recommend you kind of start from the actual AVM page directly if you're going to search for Azure stuff. And then if it's a private registry situation, then you should definitely do what Kevin did. William?
I was going to respond to your first thing about App Gateway being a single monolithic resource. What we did, or what I've done in the past, is I have split that up so I build a module and then split up the inputs into different pieces, bring all those inputs in as combining them inside the module. So then you can have like, and I use objects, through my TFRs. So the idea is if you're constantly doing one particular thing, set that as a different map or object, bring that in separately, and then just do the connection. So your object might have to have, like, let's say the app gateway name or something like that. And then you just say, grab each one of those that's got the app gateway name in it. And now you can bring those in separately. So you're not having to look at all of the other variables and values. So if it's like you're changing front ends for a bunch of things, or you're changing the back end pool or health checks, whatever it is, right? Separate those out into different inputs.
Yeah, and ultimately our goal with that is, right, we have a bunch of Terraform projects, for lack of a better term, set up to like Azure workloads, right? So one project per like resource group out in Azure. And ideally for our app gateway, we would like to push some of the code for a specific workload for the app gateway integration into that other project. And we're not able to do that right now.
Is it like because of you're adding like front ends that have special names or something like that? DNS, cert, stuff like that.
Yeah. So it's because it's one big monolithic resource, and it just kind of stinks.
Yeah, and like I say, you could build a custom module to grab those inputs separately, so that. But it sounds like you've got an app gateway built, and you're trying to add things to it from different projects.
That's what we'd ideally like to do, right? But we're not able to do that, so it just kind of sits in its central shared services project, all as one big resource.
Yeah. So then, yeah, you'd have to have a custom resource that does some lookups that already exists. So you're just adding this, because as long as you're splitting state, Terraform doesn't actually care about certain things. So if it can go and grab the data values of things and then add to it, it'd be pretty custom. But I think that you could probably get around some of the issues. Anyway. Maybe we could connect third party and see.
Meetups outside of this time are allowed, at your own risk, of course. Avoid stranger danger. There was a question in the group about, hey, how the heck do I get privileged identity management done? Those of you who have been on the call will know, and I'm just going to blast it from the loudspeakers again. Use the MS Graph provider. It is going to have everything day zero available through Entra, and not just Entra, M365 as well. So if you care about getting your SharePoint site or your Outlook notification settings or anything else configured, that's your cup of tea. And in terms of how it works, if you've ever used AZ API, it's kind of the same. And no, there's no JSON. Sorry, I just have some wounds from the 1.0 hate. But yeah, hope that helps, Alex.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Kevin.
Yeah. So another question around the AVM modules and the Terraform AVM module, since we're on this call, and direction as far as providers. I know there was talk about moving to AZ API as the de facto for AVM modules. Is that confirmed? Is that the direction?
That is the direction, and that is the plan. And we cover it a bit in our session that we had at PowerShell Summit, and we're in the process of releasing stuff like this. But the guidance that we essentially are ascribing as the product group is that if you need really fine-grained control, if you want to control everything from the beginning to the end with how Terraform and Azure interact, I'm talking here like you're a platform team that's deploying, you're essentially doing the same thing that AVM is doing. You have like private registry of modules that your application teams are deploying on all the time, stuff like that. You're probably set up for success long-term in AZ API. Don't get it twisted. AZ API is harder in the sense of you have to
I
know
agree.
how the
There's a lot more you have to do on your own.
Yeah.
But yeah, that is sort of where we stand as a platform team. We provide environments for our customers' internal other teams, and we provide those services. We provide modules for them to be able to start and bootstrap their environments quickly. So that's cool. That's good to know. Sort of AZ APIs move in that direction. A follow up on that: will we see straight AZ API modules, or is it just going to be the current ones moved to AZ API under the covers?
I think what's going to happen is we don't want to break people who've taken a dependency. So the intention is that you move them to AZ API in a way that the module consumer doesn't even feel anything. That's sort of a major goal for that whole process. So obviously that's not going to be possible in situations where AZ API doesn't support things, i.e. data plane. Most of the data plane stuff is not necessarily straightforward there. So there's going to be some migration required, but theoretically the hope is that you consume that module and you don't get any fuss in that process.
As minimal as possible. Okay. No, that's good. Yeah, I've seen a couple of modules out there that have already moved over there, like the virtual network one, where the covers is using AZ API more for everything now. So just sort of using that as a baseline for how to do our internal conversions. And then if I echo one last question, I know I saw there was the experimental, like AI-driven module development stuff that started showing up on the AVM page. Is there going to be some more talks on that? Some stuff you guys are willing to share? I know there's like some utility conversion modules that are getting created. I don't know if that's the direction that's going to. I don't. I guess, can you talk a little about those? What those are for? Is that to help? Another option.
So, as far as the AI stuff, I can't imagine we're not going to do more with AI to try to help speed up this process. So I can't tell you exactly what that's going to look like, but I do think that that's going to be reality for us. The utility modules, I'm not like, we're in the middle of still trying to like clarify some of those things. I'm not the de facto person. You should probably ping someone. Oh, am I breaking up now or is he breaking up? Everyone else is just staring at us.
You're good.
Good now? Okay. Yeah, now it's better. Sorry, that sounds.
I was just gonna say, like, yeah, I would probably talk to the people who own EVM. Jack Tracy, I think, is a name I would probably reach out to.
Okay. Great. No, that sounds good. Yeah. Thank you.
Yep. Darren?
Hi there. Yeah, back to the drift topic we were talking about earlier with the Absorb tool. Not so much about Absorb specifically, but just really a question for everybody to get, I guess, some input or from yourself about how to prevent that drift at the very beginning. So a couple of questions, I guess. Do people allow other engineers in your team or developers to run Terraform apply from branches, or do you guys force applies to only be run from a main branch after a PR, like on a successful plan? It's just thinking of ways to maybe prevent people running applies in their own branch and then maybe forgetting to run a PR, or just trying to look at ways to kind of control the drift a little bit if possible. I'm not sure if anyone has input on that. I like Matt's idea. I think it was Matt who said earlier about the running the plan, getting the detailed exit code from the plan, and then if the plan is all green, it doesn't necessarily mean there's no changes, right? So the plan can be green, but there's still changes. So yeah, it's just thinking of ways to try and better control that that process, I suppose.
Matt's got his hand up.
I mean, you could deal with that in a lot of different ways, but we definitely don't allow people to run apply from like a feature branch. It definitely needs to be
even on dev, or just production only.
What we're trying to do now is actually make it even the lower environments right now, but we're trying to open it up to maybe allow it to at least people can, as long as the plan looks good, maybe not have to wait for approvals like in Sandbox and Dev. So it's just give those people, as long as the plan's looking good, it's like, yeah, give them, who cares where they're deploying and what they're deploying necessarily, but in those higher environments for like, test and definitely prod, like it should be going through like a PR review and getting looked at. So there's certain stuff in the actions that we've wrote where we're trying to make sure that we look for that before we'd actually do an apply. But
so your apply doesn't run at PR time. So there's a plan, they raise a PR, that gets approved, and then they run the plan thereafter based on the successful PR, which is now in the main branch. Is that right?
Yeah, I mean, we're also trying to like go through and output the diff of what's happening plus the plan in like a PR conversation.
Very
so people
cool,
can actually see, because a lot of the times, I don't know, it's super hard to, some people don't even realize what's going on, and maybe there was drift that happened for some weird reason, and it should be like maybe you're just going to add a bunch of stuff and there's something that's showing up as a destroy. Like it should be looked at to figure out like, why did that happen? Did you do something that you didn't realize was going to happen? And hopefully you can address that. But that's how we've been setting up at least our repos and how the structure works.
Yeah, that's cool. Yeah, we had a new starter who unfortunately ran a pipeline last week, and because the plan was green, he was like, okay, I'll apply that. But meanwhile, the plan, fortunately, was a development environment, but the plan was still to destroy and recreate a Cosmos account, the Cosmos DB account. So it obviously ripped that all up. Yeah, just trying to think of ways to, again, just add a bit more care in that process. But yeah, thanks for that. I appreciate your input.
Yeah, I do something similar in that pull request runs TF plan.
Yep.
But it does it not just on development, it does it across all environments. So again, you've got that forward look of, yeah, it's going to just modify dev, but production's going to get recreated for some reason. So you can try and spot that. And then local development, I just have a Terraform test subscription. So that low level stuff of actually, is it going to actually apply and all the rest of it, you can run that locally, completely isolated.
I was thinking about using Terraform tests. I don't know if Terraform tests is something that can help kind of strengthen that kind of confidence in the plan, that the plan will be successful come apply time. I don't know if that's something that, I know Terraform tests have been out, not super long, but
for modules more than it is plan applies.
Okay. If you're on Azure, I mean, I would recommend that you integrate with pre-flight and get some of those valid requests and policy checks and all those things. But I'm just one voice here. I'm sure somebody has, or everybody here has an idea of a golden image of their pipelines and environments, and it probably varies slightly to everybody, and it also depends on your permissions. Like, can you block people from deploying on the portal and on dev pipelines or branches? I know there are plenty of people who swear by, like, I'm never letting anyone do anything manual. So it is truly a choose your own adventure in some sense. But there are some
you don't want to take away the power from the the other engineers in the sort of cloud development team, but there's always that level of trust that sometimes just takes one person to break it, and then you feel like you got to put the bars up again to strict, make those guidelines a bit stricter again. But anyway, thanks for the input, everyone. Cheers.
So you guys that are talking about doing plans on pull request builds, right? So we perform pull request builds, but we've never been able to get the plan set up because every time we commit changes, Azure DevOps does not gracefully fail out, and it leaves our state files, which are stored in Azure storage accounts, in a locked state. Have you guys experienced that, dealt with that?
I recently found a environment variable that you can add to the binary. So I think it's called tf_in_automation. Set that to true. I believe that your pipeline will still fail, but it doesn't lock the state.
Okay.
Because I'd like to run
I'd like to run the plan against all three. I mean, we got dev stage prod, all three environments, and somehow get that. I mean, ideally added into the pull request somehow would be nice. I'll look into that. Thanks.
All right. We have 3 minutes left. That's still enough time for another topic if anyone's got one. David's hand went up immediately.
Just sorry, first time I'm on the call, so been a good conversation so far. Default mode for a lot of people. Anyway, you brought up PIM earlier. One of my challenges right now is not PIM for Entra, but it's PIM for Azure RM. None of the AVMs, I mean, they don't cover it. So we're either writing a custom module or we're using the Cloud Nation one is the only one I found. Just wondering what everybody else does.
You're talking the role assignments and how that's getting spun up? Or?
Active and eligible PIM role assignments. PIM settings, custom module, no problem. We've got that sorted, but just wondering what everybody else is doing. So don't everybody talk at once.
Yeah, it's a loud group here. Are people using just the resources straight up? Is anybody kind of rolling up those into a module, bundling it with their other PIM stuff?
I wish there's another group that handles that, and they're still not doing it with code. So it's pretty unfortunate, but
Yeah, we're just trying to build out our new environment, and we're trying to do it so that the dev teams have some default permissions, but then break glass, whatever levels of roles that we want to give them, or if they need to add files to a storage account or modify key vault secrets, we want to force them to use PIM so that they're not just living with those permissions. But we're trying to figure out the best way to handle that as we build out a new landing zone. So, anyway.
Thanks for the question. All right, we got a minute left. Any last burning questions? Well, thanks for joining the April call. Next month, as per usual, is going to be in the more Australia-friendly time zones, and then we will see you all again in June, and hopefully we'll no longer be seeing this rainy Seattle weather by then. So cheers, everyone. Have a good night or a good rest of your day.
Thank you. Thanks a lot.
Thanks, Steve.
Thanks.
Thank you.